Welcome to A Dose of Feeling. I'm Mushka, just a real human navigating the beautiful chaos of life. This podcast is about keeping it real, sharing my highs, lows, and the lessons that shaped me. It's a mix of stories, inspiration, and honest conversations, like chatting with a friend who just gets it. So get comfy and let's dive into this journey together. Let's feel it all.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Dose of Feeling. I'm so happy you're here, and I hope that this finds you in a beautiful space wherever you may be. Today's episode is about the experience that I had earlier this year of finally coming to a place where it kind of all boiled down to me realizing that I no longer needed to prove myself and how long I had spent trying to prove myself. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this idea of wanting to be good enough and, kind of proving that this life that you created for yourself is enough for everyone else. But in that, obviously, we lose ourselves and what we feel is right for us. It was when I started shifting into like a new space within myself and more growth and inner work, I noticed that the things that I really felt so strongly towards no longer felt aligned in the same way. That over time, as you grow, as you learn, heal, reflect, you'll notice that things are going to start looking differently for you. And the things that you thought were your entire life and goal and vision may not stay the same for, maybe within a few months or years. And I will say, I grew up in a religious home, eldest of 10 kids, and I had this image of I was in a community. My father was a rabbi, and I really put myself out there as shy as I was always available. I remember, even as a teenager, I would have random people in my community come over to me and just kind of bare their souls. And I would be like, okay, I don't know what to do with everything you're saying. But I was told, and I knew at the time that I was a good listener, and it started there, but it formed into it being the rest of my life up until, this point. And when it came time, I had gone to high school in a different city. I moved away from home in an Orthodox high school that had no secular education. And after that, so I didn't really graduate. Then I went to 2 seminaries, and I came back home when I was 19. And my mom sat me down and said, okay, what are we doing next? And the Hasidic way of doing it is that you start to look for a partner, and for me that was likely to go to America and find a partner there. But I wanted something as well. I wanted like a career. My mom was a teacher. She was also the Rebbitzin. She was very busy, and she was home a lot with us, the kids. And I was like, yeah, that's great, but I also want like a real life. Like I really want to get out there and like do more and be more. And so I was very driven for that being a reality for me. And so what do you want to do with your life? And she gave me some options, and then she brought up about how I'm a good listener and I've helped many people over the years, did a lot of volunteer and community work. I was a good listener and I could really be there for people. People felt safe to share with me. And my mom said, well, why don't you go into the psychology field? And it was very hard to even think about getting into college, into university, because I didn't graduate. I didn't really have any secular education. But what I did do was I managed to write an essay. I collected all my volunteer hours, all the credits I have, and I didn't end up doing psychology because I didn't know any math, and you need math for that psychology degree that I was looking at. And so I dropped that. And to this day, I'm really not great at math. and I probably only learnt math until 6th, 7th grade. And I remember even when I was in 7th grade or 8th grade, I was in a Jewish school that had secular studies, and they gave a math test, and I got a 0. And the teacher spent a couple hours with me after school one day to try and tutor me so that I could redo the test again. And I only got 30% the second time around. So clearly, I'm not made for math. But I decided that psychology wasn't for me. And my mom and I looked through different options, and there was a counseling degree, a mental health counseling degree at bachelor's, and I put my whole application back together and I got accepted. And I was so thrilled because I had realized at that point that I actually loved learning. Up until then, I did not love what I was learning. And so to be able to go and study and learn and retain all this information and just feel so good about it was a really big deal for me. After that, I moved to America and I continued online, and I was very, very dedicated and determined, and it's something about me till this day that I really can appreciate about myself, that I am driven. When I want something, I go and I give it 100%. And so I was dating, I was still in school online, I got married, I was still in school, I had my first pregnancy and baby, and I was in school. And because of the time change, I would have to get up 4 a.m. with my newborn even to be able to do the online classes. And I didn't care. I was like, I'm doing this. And I graduated. And it felt like a really big deal for me to be able to do that through all those pretty significant life changes. And I was living in Buffalo at the time, and I didn't really have the opportunity to follow my path. When I met my husband, I knew that I would move to America for his business. And so I was kind of in the back burner, my dreams, my career goals. But I knew that I would also have to try as hard as I could to still do what I wanted. And so living in Buffalo, I couldn't do much with my bachelor's degree, but I took on every volunteer opportunity, internships. There was this place where you could volunteer. They were like bachelor level counselors. A couple times a week, we would meet in this center, and people would come in, and it was no cost, and they would meet with us, and we would offer like support, kind of like a counseling setting. Then we would go back to the group and debrief, and there was a licensed clinician there, and it was such a rewarding space, firstly to be able to do what I loved, and also to be so supported. I didn't really have many environments like that where I felt supported. I also felt like being a woman, a mom, young, and really trying to pursue this career while balancing everything else that I was doing didn't seem important to other people. And that's what I guess that's what I felt like I needed to really push hard for, to prove to people that, look at me, I'm doing this. A big part of proving myself was that I didn't have an education that many other people did. I didn't have an upbringing like many other people did who have great careers. And so for me to be in this space felt like such a reward, and I was so grateful for it. But it was like every single day I had to keep that up. I had to keep pushing for what I worked so hard that may have seemed unimaginable to attain. I got it. At one point, my husband told me that we had to move to Baltimore for business, and I was devastated because I finally felt like I had my own little network when I had so many great opportunities, and I felt like it was starting to kickstart this new stage of my career. And we had to move, and it was really hard because I didn't have a say, and it was meant to be, and it's, I supported my husband in that, but it was hard. But I did, and I moved to Baltimore, and I felt like I had to start from scratch in many ways. I didn't have the same resources or networks that I did in Buffalo, and I took some time. I didn't do anything. I didn't look for anything. And after about 6 months, I decided I wanted to go back to school to get my master's. I wasn't getting the jobs that I wanted, and I applied. They didn't accept me the first time. I was devastated, and I brought up those feelings of back when I was younger of I'll never be good enough because I didn't go to a proper school, I didn't go to a proper college, I wasn't as dedicated. But then the second time I applied, they accepted me, and that was a huge relief to know that I could do this, to get into a master's and to be in a space in my life where like this is what I'm ready to work on. And during that time I was pregnant with my second child, and it didn't stop me. I was up at the crack of dawn studying, and I was in school a lot. My oldest was in school, and so I had time during the day. And then I had an internship, and I had my baby, had my second child. And during that time, I was in the middle of an internship that was really important. I was in the middle also of a semester that they didn't want me to leave long for. And so I told them I will be back in 2 weeks after I have my baby. And I didn't even think to ask or to question or to push it, because back then I didn't know my voice, and I wanted to follow the rules, and I didn't want to get in trouble. And I'm a big goody-goody. Well, I was. And it was just something I did. You tell me this, I'll be there. And so 2 weeks later, I left my baby with my husband, and I did a few classes every other day, every other times. And that was a little hard because I had been home with my son for 18 months, my oldest. And so to just leave my daughter, I regret it. I really do. I really wished that I had things differently, but I also know at the same time that it was all meant to be. And it led me to where I am now, and I've come to terms with all of that. After those 2 weeks and I went back, I had about a few more weeks or a month until I had summer vacation. I got to spend that time with my kids, and I really enjoyed it. But then when she was about 5 months, I had to go back to school. At the same time, do a really long internship. And so I had to leave her with a babysitter early mornings to late nights. And that was a real challenge. But at the time I was so focused on making it to the top. I didn't know how to stop driving. I should stop being so driven. And I got great opportunities, internships in places that I had always dreamed about. I worked in a foster care agency, which I loved. I worked as a forensic social worker to the public defender's office, and I would go and stand up in court and prepare my documents. It was so thrilling. I felt very powerful being in these big spaces that I never had the opportunity to, or I never imagined that I would be in. And it pushed me, it really challenged me every single time to, speak more and to be more confident and to look at my self-worth and my value in these spaces. When I graduated, I was so relieved. I loved it. And I was like, okay, let's get to work. Time to find a job. Time to start a career. And I had a dream job for years. My dream job, although I really wanted to continue the forensic social work position. It just wasn't feasible at the time. And so my dream job was to work in a hospital and in the women's and children's department. And it was really hard to get in, and I pushed, and I had a lot of patience, and I eventually got the job, and I was thrilled because I wanted to show the world and myself, but really more so the latter part was the world, how I could make it. Like, look at me. Like, look what I did. I got what I wanted. I've gotten everything I've wanted. Yes, it's taken me working my butt off, but I literally got what I wanted. And I was in the seventh heaven, and I started to realize over time that it was not at all what I had dreamed of. And that's the thing about when you manifest these dreams or they come into your life. I get what I want, but I never realized that sometimes it's at an expense of something else. And so although I loved my job and it was so rewarding, the management treated me terribly. The residents were so hurtful, and it was really starting to affect my worth and my self-esteem. And as it was, I wasn't in a great place back then, and it just was so hard for me to experience both of these feelings at the same time. The strong feeling of, wow, this is everything I've ever dreamed of, and at the same time, how can this be everything I ever dreamed of? I was so broken within a few months, and after 6 months I had to leave, and I really had to pick myself back up because I was really scarred by that experience that I got there, but it wasn't what I had dreamed of. And it kind of like slowed me down in the sense of, why are you so driven for what? But it didn't stop me from wanting to keep proving myself to the world and to people and myself that you can keep going, Mushka, you got this. And so I went from there I decided, like, that's it. I'm not working in any organization, company. I'm going to be a therapist. I'm going to sit on a couch across from you, listen to your problems the same way it was meant to be when I was 19. And I will just do that for the rest of my life and I'll be fine. And so I worked for a practice in Maryland, and they were incredible from the get-go. They were so supportive. It wasn't Jewish, but they were so supportive and understanding, and we did everything together. I loved my coworkers. We would always go out, invited me to their weddings. It was so great. I could choose my clientele, and at that point I was working with women and relationship traumas and women's issues and couples. I loved it, and it felt like this was my dream. And I also started working from home, and I could just be in my office. And then I was pregnant. I had my third child, and I had a babysitter in the house, and I would go up and down and feed him in between. And at a certain point I noticed that something started to not feel so great. And at first I was like, maybe my clients aren't aligning as much, maybe my schedule isn't aligning. And I was working there for 3 years. And so I would say about 2 years in, I started to notice something felt funny. So I moved things around. I changed my schedule every now and then. I moved around clients. I changed what I thought was my specialization. I did different trainings, and something just wasn't sitting so great with me. And then October 7th happened, and that's when things started to turn. And I realized that not everyone will have my back when I really need it. And although there wasn't any blatant anti-Semitism, it didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel protected. And my coworkers had a lot to say. And let's just say that we did not agree with the same things and same opinions. My boss really tried to support me, and I wanted for that to be enough, but I was starting to see the cracks, and I feel like there was kind of this energy shift a little bit before that, but that changed a lot for me. At the same time, my husband and I were building our house, and there was so much happening in our lives, so much change, so much newness. My husband was doing different things with his work, and I was just slowly feeling less and less interested in this drive, this career goal. And at one point I was like, I'm just going to be transparent here. Maybe it's the money. Maybe the money's not enough. But if it was great money, and if I wanted to work harder, I could have gotten more money. So obviously that wasn't the issue. And then I was changing getting different clients. That didn't help changing. And at a certain point, I realized it just doesn't feel right for me. And I've never experienced, over the years, the last 6 years or so, I've really done so much work on myself and my healing and my feeling. The healing is in the feeling. And that's a really big one for me, because for a long time, I did not know how to feel. So I was experiencing this huge feeling of shift, and I didn't know what to do with it. I was so lost. I was really down. For like 9-10 months, I was doing so much work with my holistic practitioner and my spiritual psychologist, and I was just like, something isn't feeling right, and my purpose and my mission and my drive and my career and all these things were intertwining, and I just didn't know what to do with all of that. And one day, earlier this year, I had the most incredible download that I have spent probably 13 years of my life trying to prove myself to everyone around me. And one day it just didn't matter anymore. That I didn't care anymore about what anyone thought of my career, my drive, my dreams. And it was only about me and what mattered to me. And that was like the biggest wake up call I've ever had in my life, because I can't tell you the amount of change that happened with that realization was the spiral that like brought my like accelerated my life times 100. I didn't even know what to do with it, but I stepped into that role and I said, I feel like this is it. This is the shift that needs to happen. Letting go of this position because I choose to. Previous situations, I never really felt like I had a choice for things. It was just what I do. I just keep going. And now I had this choice to do something for myself because I can actually feel, and I know what it's like to feel. It was so powerful for me. And I was really sad because I'd put so much effort and energy into getting to where I'd gotten in my, my level of career. And I know that doesn't mean that I'll never be in this space again or be a therapist or be a career woman, but it felt like my trajectory had shifted all the way to the other side, and that my role wasn't to sit in a chair across from people and help them in the same way that I had known how all these years. And when I finally let go of that, I was scared. I thought I would regret it. I thought I'd be really sad about it. But honestly, it was the most freeing feeling I'd ever felt. And I really owned it. And I was scared more so about what other people would think and say. And so I didn't say much and I didn't make a big deal about it. But I focused more on what came next. After that, I went through this really incredible period of just feeling. And I no longer felt pulled by doing and driven and working so hard, and instead just knowing what it felt like to be with myself, be with my feelings, be within this life that I created for myself so gently. And I'm a different person. Let me just say that. To finally acknowledge that and to notice that I have that within me, and I had been pushing against that for so long. Like, I've wanted this my whole life. I just want to chill. I just want to slow down. And this drive, this proving, was really taking over what I wanted for my life. And what I wanted was a gentleness to just be and feel. And that was like this new wave of me stepping into a role as a listener, a helper, a supporter, just in my own life. After that, I felt like I let go of something and allowed so much more into my life. It was as if that was taking up all this emotional baggage, preventing other things that I wanted. And after I let go of that job and kind of let go of this notion of like my career and proving myself to everyone else around me and realizing that I'm enough and everything I have and I'm doing is enough, I opened channels for so much into my life. And I began working with women just in my life who would come to me and be like, help me with this, and people's relationships, people coming to my husband and I and be like, help us with this in our relationship, and how do you do this? And I started facilitating women's circles, and I started just being available for women to talk, and I didn't make anything out of it. It was like this channel just started to freely come into me because I was doing what finally felt right for me. And so that's all to say that it is so important to notice where in your life you are doing things for yourself or where you are doing things for other people. How much of it are you doing to prove yourself, to prove your worth? Because at the end of the day, nothing and no one can prove your worth other than you. And you are worthy no matter what you do, where you go, how hard you work. You are worthy just the way you are, and you're enough the way you are. And so my message is feel where you feel aligned in what you're doing. And if you feel like something's blocked, if you feel like something's stuck, take a look, not only at what you're doing, but how you're doing it and why you're doing it. And what more can your life look like if you let go of that thing that didn't feel right for you? And there's a lot for me to still learn, and I'm still very much on this journey of like figuring out what just happened with my life. And I often do, like I shared earlier, kind of sit in some regret and some guilt of things I did. And at the same time, I know that everything happened for a reason, and everything that I experienced brought me to where I am right now. And right now, I wouldn't change for the world. So take a think about that. Again, thank you for being here. Take what you want, leave the rest. And I hope that you feel peace and find this level of worth and enoughness within yourself. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.